The Unrelating podcasts are meant to be for education and entertainment. They don't constitute a service or advice. For personal struggles, please reach out to a medical or mental health professional.
Michelle, is there a suggestion you give your clients when it comes to improving not only their mental health, but their physical health?
Absolutely, because those two are so closely linked. You can't really have one without the other. So today I'm excited. We're going to talk to someone who really can speak to that mind-body connection and why it's so important.
Yeah, one of the things I do for my mental health is I walk. I go for walks, and it's easy. It takes about an hour. Get about 10,000. Well, hopefully get 10,000 steps. Which that's what they say is the magic number, and we'll find out if that actually is the correct number. Our guest is actually a friend of mine.
So you know he's the real deal.
Yeah, he set me on a successful path that I'm still trying to follow to this day. So looking forward to talking to him.
Me too. And, the show is about relationships, and I'm eager to hear him talk about his relationship with fitness and with the evolution of how he got to where he is and how the work that he does really impacts people's relationship with themselves.
Welcome to Unrelating with Kel and Michelle, and I'm one of your hosts, Kelly. With me is my co-host, Michelle, a licensed marriage and family therapist who's been providing individual and couples therapy for over 2 decades. Together, we'll explore how we engage in relationships, why we do what we do, and what causes people to unrelate. Joining us today is Justin, who is a certified personal trainer and a corrective exercise specialist. That's a mouthful right there, Justin.
It is. I usually don't introduce myself that way, but I appreciate it. Again, it makes me sound a lot cooler than I am.
Is there an acronym for that? Can we say CPT?
They say CPT and CES, yeah.
Okay, great.
All the letters after your name.
Right, exactly. I feel
they
like
make you legitimate, right?
Totally. Every profession has their acronyms and stuff in their own language.
Yeah.
So, Michelle, I know Justin, having joined his gym, Poise Gym, back in, I want to say 2016, I think, Justin?
Yeah, we opened in 2014, yeah. So, yeah.
You opened in 2014?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. Poise Fitness, which was in Hermosa Beach, California. Loved it. Justin, describe Poise for me.
Yeah, so it's a lot of the group fitness, I guess when you talk about like HIIT or interval training, there's a bunch of different names of boot camp stuff, typically follows the format of strength training and cardio. So typically like a treadmill, maybe a rower, and then some weights and such like that. And I actually worked at a circuit training gym in Venice and ultimately in Brentwood, and just noticed a lot of the clients while they saw results, they were getting injured. And so there's this component, and thus the corrective exercise and why I sought that out, which is kind of like, it's like personal training, physical therapy. I don't want to go into say it's full on physical therapy, but it looks and feels a lot like it. There's a lot of the same type of movements. You go through the same progressions and such like that. And I've even had some of my clients say they've gotten better results from my program than for other physical therapists. And I think that just more has to do with, are you looking at the individual or are you looking kind of at the fads and such like that? And I think that was ultimately what was wrong with the gym that I was at, was that there's a lot of people that were getting injured, and it was more of like, it catered to 20 somethings who had indestructible bodies, and some of the people who were in their 30s, 40s, and so on almost felt like they would be there for a little while and then they get injured and would be gone. And I never felt that to be a good business model, A, and it's just, you're not serving your client, B, more importantly, well that way. And so decided to add in a third element, a corrective exercise, or as we called it, Poise, functional movement element to it. And we had basically the classes broken down into 3 sections: cardio, strength training, and functional movement. So again, that was kind of our secret sauce, I guess you could say, because no other gym offered that. And we saw a wide array of people that came in, and were able to train at their own level. And I felt like we wanted to we wanted to create as much of a group personal training element as possible. It's kind of a fleeting goal sometimes to go into put something like that in there, but we tried to personalize it as much as we could, where when we explained an exercise, we give modifications or progressions so people could choose, basically make their own adventure, not necessarily labeling that the individual that way, but just what kind of workout that you wanted that day. Because everybody wants, has some days where they want to go easier or harder and such like that. So we tried to cater and create that niche as much as possible.
It feels like a relief and a solution because there's just so much crap out there about fitness and how to do this and try this new exercise. And people do it at home or at the gym and they don't know what they're doing. And there's so many people who don't know what they're talking about. So to be able to go somewhere where someone knows what they're talking about, knows how to keep you safe while you're doing your fitness, to me just would feel like a relief to find that.
Thanks. Yeah.
For me, because I'm not a big fan of joining the gym. I mean, I've joined 24-hour fitness and all those other ones, but this one just felt like very tailor made, very, like you said, just very niche. But it felt, it wasn't intimidating at all. It felt actually really, really comfortable. And the workout was fantastic.
But yeah, it was nice. And I think it answered a call that people wanted, and again, to where you can choose your own adventure. And we tried to create that type of environment, everything down. We actually didn't have any mirrors in there, which most group fitness classes, you're surrounded by mirrors. So you're staring at yourself as you're like, as you're going through and maybe not looking the best. And I understand also at the same point, as you see progress, you want to see that. And, if there's flattering light and stuff like that, sometimes it's good. But we just thought, again, we thought, well, let's just try to be different. And maybe we can have people think more about their body, kind of getting more into that mind muscle connection than looking in the mirror at everybody else in the class. And hopefully the community that we, attracted would reflect that. And it was nice because we did. And felt like, again, as Kelly mentioned, we got people kind of from all over shapes and sizes. And it also felt good at the same point to have the functional movement element also was kind of an equalizer for people who came in from perhaps other gyms and were kind of feeling themselves and wanted to show up everybody else in the class. You make them raise a leg and incorporate just a little bit of balance or start working the smaller muscles, and it totally floors them.
If I may vent for a moment, because you said the word balance. Kelly knows sometimes I get on a soapbox about the medical industrial complex that we all have to live under. But I was trying to get physical therapy recently because I'm trying to do preventative work to say, like, I want to make sure I have balance, that my posture is not going in the wrong direction as I get older. That I have some, bone density, preventative work, and insurance won't pay for things like that. And, you just come up against all these barriers, people saying, well, you're not meeting medical necessity because you don't have an injury. And it's like, but shouldn't we all be trying to, do some preventative work for our health?
Right now, there's just too much money in reactive medicine than preventative medicine.
Okay, well, actually, I want to take us back a little bit. So Justin, I know we talked about a little bit of your backstory, but you originally didn't start working in fitness, correct?
Correct.
Tell us about your journey to fitness, because I recall you started in entertainment.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it meandered a little bit. One of my first jobs was actually as a personal trainer at a local YMCA when I was about 17, was about to be 18. I knew one of the managers who worked there, so he kind of let me get in a little bit earlier just because I was kind of nerding out on the stuff. And did that in high school and college, and wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, majored in business and just kind of kept things open. Moved to LA and actually worked for a talent agency for a while, and then ultimately worked in music, from there into publication writing, and wasn't good enough of a writer to make the cut for when all the publications were kind of going over and switching to blogs. And so I defaulted back to health and fitness at the time and started working at a interval training gym doing group fitness, which I had never done before. I just did personal training, but thought, it's a job, what the hell, I could figure it out. And actually fell in love with it and really enjoyed it and liked being there and having like a group that you can interact with and serve. But in the same point, you get that feedback of them, if they have a good workout, everybody's high on endorphins at the end and being like, thanks, nice job. And actually that was kind of the first time I got like the real sense when I did personal training in high school and college. Like, I think I was just one of those more robotic trainers, maybe like everybody kind of starts that way. But the group fitness, because of the fact so much of it is kind of like it's the training plus there's the interaction, slightly a performance element to it, it brought my personality out. And so kind of found that new element and realized that so much of getting somebody through, as far as personal training, getting them through that hour is creating an environment to where the time goes quickly. So sometimes it's
Mhm.
shutting up, sometimes it's talking, sometimes it's making jokes, sometimes it's doing, getting into the grains of, what the exercises are doing. And usually it's a balance of a little bit of everything. You just figure out the ingredients, I guess. But started to get, and then my reward that I found at the end of the session or at the end of the workout, again, was that, everybody's feeling good, and you get that gratification of them being, hey, thanks, like I really needed that, or thanks for the work, or whatever form that takes. And that was kind of what I got back for it. And it became kind of this snowball effect of it, and just refound my enjoyment for it, and just decided that I wanted to continue in this path.
Well, it reminds me of this theme that I'm hearing among people who have worked and are working in entertainment, where it is really tricky and really difficult, and you see people transitioning and pivoting to different career paths because, especially nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I've worked in entertainment for 20 plus years, and I guess what I'm lacking, what I've lacked, is really a feeling of purpose in some ways and giving back. And I'm kind of in this position now in my career where I'm actually, okay, how can I help people, or what can I do? Because ultimately you don't get that necessarily from some jobs, whereas others, I don't know. And I guess, and as we get older too, our priorities change.
Yeah. And one of the greatest protective factors for your mental health is feeling like you have a meaningful role in your life.
Absolutely. But honestly, back to the exercise point, if with all of that, I didn't have my own personal workout and time that I can do it, which sometimes is just a couple of minutes of just quick stretching because, with everything, sometimes there's not enough time, just depending on what, obligations you have. But at least getting that little bit of time, whether it be to myself, that's really the key. And again, that's the precursor to figuring out all those other things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, though you say a couple minutes, for me, one exercise minute equals like 17 real minutes. That helps you understand my mindset.
Totally. Yeah, it's like Inception, like when they go into that, it's exactly. Like every section is, every minute is like 50 years or whatever.
No, you've touched on a lot of great points, Justin. I can definitely say, I guess improving my physical fitness improves my mental fitness.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel better about myself, especially as you get older. You have to take care of your body.
Yeah.
It's your temple. So
it is. And it keeps
and if
score.
I can say, The Body Keeps a Score, by the way, is a wonderful book about trauma. A lot of times in societal vernacular, people talk about mind-body connection, and people think about like meditation and things like that. But really, when you're talking about physical and mental health, they're not separate entities. They're so closely linked, and one affects the other more than people think, and vice versa. So always trying to, like you said, Kelly, taking care of your physical health takes care of your mental health, and it works the other way too. Can I say one more thing before we move on? Because Justin, you said something about, having your more communal goals with your family obligations, and it's okay to have personal goals as well. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to feel guilty about having a goal that's just for you. I have a huge collectivist lens, so I think it's really important to have a communal goal and to contribute to the greater good. But sometimes caregivers or people who like to help other people kind of feel like they're not allowed to have something that's just for them.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to point that out. If that resonates with you, if you're one of those people, it's okay.
Thanks. Yeah. And just be a little bit intentional about it. And you can even kind of check both boxes of, the aforementioned, meditation along with the exercise, because exercise is a form of meditation in itself, especially if you're trying to really bring yourself present with your body, checking in with your body, thinking about what you're stretching or moving or whatever it is, or not, or just, focusing just on being, whatever it is. I think that's enough. And I think giving ourselves a little bit of grace to be like, that's okay for today. And then tomorrow's another day. And if I have more time, then I can do it. But I think we get into this negative self-talk sometimes where it's like, well, I just don't, it's got to be an hour, and it's got, I got to burn at least 500 calories, and I got to do this and I got to do that. And it's like, forget all that. And actually a really useful tool that I've offered some of my clients is, if a couple of them were trying to work out on their own between our sessions. And so I said, create a maximum time for you to work out, not a minimum time. Because most of the time we're like, well, I'm going to work out for at least 10 minutes. Instead, say, well, I'm only going to work out for 5 minutes, or I'm only going to work out for 2 minutes. And you'll be surprised how hard you work during that short period of time, realizing that, oh, time's running out. Like, I got to get going. Like, we all have, even the most lazy person has that inner competitiveness where they'll uptick their effort just a little bit during that time. So I found that to be a really, useful tool that I've repeated to other people. Again, having a maximum number of time that you're going to work out versus a minimum number of time.
Well, especially as a parent too. I mean, you have a very limited amount of time, and both of you can speak to this, but you really need to be very, very efficient with that time. So
Yes,
coming up with quick, efficient workout plans that you can do in like 15, 20 minutes between naps or kids eating.
absolutely. And,
Yeah.
sometimes what we'll do, and I say this even if you're not working with the trainer, say you have like a full workout, like I do this, 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 and this. Find out a mini workout where find like the most important part of that and see if you can, that's your minimum requirement. And it might even
Mhm.
just be like a quick stretch. Like, a lot of us have like, neck pain or upper back tightness, right? Because we're sitting in front of the desk, lower back pain. So
Mhm.
find, and the nice thing about YouTube is that you can look around and just try things out, as long as as long as you're not doing too heavy a weight and stuff like that, but you can afford to do a certain stretch, I guess, as long as you're not going too deep, to try something out here and there, whatever, but find something that works and then try to, just replicate that and have that be your minimum workout that you do every day. And it's crazy how much of that consistency versus the intensity really starts to give you results.
I was thinking about parenting. There's a
Right.
relentlessness to parenting. And so,
Yeah.
just what you guys were talking about in terms of how do you kind of break your focus on the parenting piece to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. That's really hard for people.
It
Yeah.
is. It is. And I think a lot of times also being like, the kids are okay. I can go and I can do this real, quick.
Mhm.
Or, sometimes if I can't do that, I'll just stretch on the floor when the kids are by there, whatever. And sometimes they mess it up and go over there, whatever. But I think it also sets a good, it's sort of a two birds, one stone because you're setting a good example for them at the same point. Plus you're prioritizing it and getting it done. But
Yeah.
it's tough to go into breakaway and to give yourself that permission to separate.
And even I don't know if you agree, Justin, because you do things the right way, but thinking of kind of reframing what exercise is to include things you wouldn't consider exercise. So with my kids,
Absolutely.
we do dance parties, or we jump around and
Mhm.
we just make up games where I end up getting physical exertion.
You
But I
chase
wasn't.
you chase them around.
I do, yeah. They like to play tag and things like that, and just being silly with them. I wouldn't categorize it as exercise, but it is.
It is absolutely. Oh, no, I couldn't agree more. And I've even one of my clients likes to clean a lot, and she said, "I feel like I burn a lot of calories like when I clean." And I said, "Well, why don't you just turn your Apple Watch on when you start cleaning?" And it's like 500, 600 calories and stuff like that. So, and she's one of those people who just enjoys to clean. So it's reinforced her getting her other workouts in because she's feeling good about like burning all these calories during the day and such like that. So it can be something like that. Yeah, just jumping with your kids, like you mentioned, anything like that. And that's why they have those, there's that trampoline fitness,
Oh
craze and
yeah.
stuff like that. And in my opinion, some people will ask me, what do you think about this or that? And as long as something's is safely being done, and you'll know that your body speaks back to you, you'll know what is okay. As long as it's that and it gets your heart rate up and you enjoy it, that's what's most important. So we had some people who came into Poise who were just like, it's not my thing. I like yoga. I like Pilates. Great.
Mhm.
And it's even better that you know that, for sure. That's all part of dating is that to find out, it's what you like and what you don't like, you know what I mean, with that
Exactly.
until you find then you can zero in on what you like.
I'll ask my mom, who's in her late 70s, and I'll ask her what is she doing to stay fit, because she is pretty fit and she does do yoga. But one thing she always talks about is how she likes to garden and she likes to mow her grass. It gives her it's obviously there's some strength work there, and then
Hmm.
there's steps. So for
Yeah.
her, I think that's her big outlet.
And even meditation to that, because I think I'm probably saying this totally wrong, but I believe, I don't know if it's monks or but don't they like rake the sands and make
Mhm.
like different designs and stuff like that? And so I think there's a meditative aspect to that. And I apologize if I said if it's not monks or if it's something else, but
Yeah.
point being again with the meditate. And so I think it's the same thing with gardening and even mowing the lawn and stuff like that. It feels good. It's almost like it's the same thing with cleaning. Like you're moving through space. And again, there's a meditative aspect to it. And I think they even touched upon, there's a Netflix series a little while back called Blue Zones, and they were
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
focusing in on
Yep.
centenarian, so areas where they had a lot of people who lived past 100. And I think they found several pillars were like in common. It was, purpose, activity, I think like community, humor, and I think sense of purpose. And I feel like that kind of touches upon a couple of those. And again, it doesn't have to be just exercise. It could just be moving. And one of the nice things here in North Carolina, and at least in our community, a lot of people walk and are outside and doing it. And there's a fair amount of more people above the age of 60 who live here versus, kind of in the Los Angeles area. Being active and keeping that as part of your life is even more important, as Kelly, as you mentioned before. And so, I think, again, just creating some sort of like habit, and again, opening the world to where, again, it doesn't have to be your standard lifting weights. As long as you're doing something like that, you're really in the right, heading in the right direction.
Although they say as you get older, strength training is also really important.
Thank you
Yes.
for correcting. I realized actually after I said that, I was like, but, thank you for saying that. And it is really important to also get to not just do, for the aforementioned thing where you're just, kind of pushing a lawnmower or whatever, because what ends up happening is that you get certain overactive and certain underactive muscles. I always like to give kind of low cost, I guess, options, because I realize a personal trainer isn't for everybody, and B, not everybody can afford it. To really listen to your body and be curious about going onto YouTube or the internet. I realize there's a lot of crap out there, but
Mm-hmm.
try to just be as critical as you can when you do it, and try stuff out in a very low intensity controlled way. And I think a lot of us can, if you're really being intentional and present with what you're doing, and take baby steps with it, you can kind of start to figure out. And there's a lot of free resources that are out there. You can find stuff by physical therapists who say, here's an exercise that gets away, will help lower back pain and such like that. And again, be curious and to try that out, and be proactive with, your preventative health. And I think if you do that, you can get away with, and if you have a little bit of, motivation, within reason, within those couple of minutes, that you can build something up for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you said something about connecting to your body. I don't want to bring the party down, but to touch on trauma or adverse childhood experiences, a lot of what happens when you've gone through something emotionally or mentally is you disconnect from your body.
Yeah.
And so sometimes healing work for trauma has to involve connecting yourself back to how you feel, where you feel things in your body, being aware of what your body is doing and feeling. And I think if someone is going through a lot or has been through a lot in their life, to incorporate that piece would be an important part of healing.
And even being okay with, I get this sometimes. It's very strange where, or maybe it's not strange, and it makes sense again, because we're getting, things moving and things start to come out. But I've had times where at the end of a workout, like I'm like, why am I crying? Why is there like tears coming down my eyes? But when you get everything going, there's a level of a purge that happens, not just, like sweating. But I do think that, sometimes things, emotions can come out, and it feels very cathartic in that sense.
I have clients who will come into the office and they'll say, yeah, I'm feeling good, I'm okay, but their shoulders are next to their ears, or their fists are clenched, or their leg is bouncing a mile a minute.
Yeah.
And so knowing their cues helps them intervene on their own behalf. So if they notice, oh my gosh, my shoulders are next to my ears, I'm really tense, there's a cognitive dissonance if your body's saying one thing and your brain is saying something else.
And all you have to do is just, start with one, like you mentioned, with, oh my God, my neck's and start with that. And then you might notice something else, and it becomes kind of this onion effect where you peel back layers and you realize, oh, maybe that was causing that. And it becomes a little interesting to kind of learn your body in that sense, and learn, oh, I should sit this way or that. And again, it just all kind of starts with that, at least just once a day, having a moment where you kind of just check in with your body, even just for a moment, because that really starts to add up after a while, and it feeds itself, and you'll find that your motivation just kind of comes naturally that way, because you'll want to do more, because it's, it's giving you more results and more reward.
Justin, one thing that I've incorporated as I've gotten older is walking, and I'm obsessed with my steps every day. I have to hit 10,000 steps every day. Which,
That's my
by the way,
dad.
where do they come up with that number? By the way, 10,000. I have no idea. But
So I think that it was just rounded. It was just kind of like a nice round number with that. I've heard that you need more. I've heard that you need less. I feel like you get from one study to another. And it's also kind of a black and white way of looking at it because it depends on like what else you're doing during the day. Are you standing? Are you sitting? What's your BMI and stuff like that, which I say BMI also with that. That's such like a black and white way also of looking at it. But there's just a bunch of other factors to go into look at that.
Yeah, and I've heard people who walk every day, they do lose weight. I mean, because if you eat well and it's consistent with it, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, to the point of like anything that you could do consistently and create kind of a bar, whether it's the 10,000, but at the same point, if you're doing 10,000 every day and you're noticing you're not getting results, well, then it might be time to, raise it to, 1,200, or 12,000, or incorporate some strength training into it. And I think that's it is kind of like there's that zone of proximal development. Like you want it to be like a little bit challenging, but not too challenging, like making yourself like 1% better every time or whatever. So that's where I was saying, I guess the 10K can, depend on the individual. For somebody we're just getting to do a little bit of activity, that might be, way too high of a goal. But for somebody who's active, that might be too low of a bar to set.
The other great thing about walking is it regulates your breathing, or at least it distracts your breathing. So if you're someone with anxiety or someone who's feeling tense, you just think of all these different activities that if you can distract yourself with something physical, it's going to change the way you're breathing, which is then going to help regulate you in a different way.
Absolutely. And even moving through, when you go walking, moving through space, is really good and good for, cognition and stuff like that. And brings you more present. So no, I think that's
and nature baths and forest baths.
Getting out in nature is so key for your mental health.
Yeah, Kelly, you're huge on that.
Well, not lately, but yes. I have a beach, I guess that's sort of nature. On that same note, Justin, as far as walking, what advice do you give your clients, especially as they age, to kind of improve their physical health? I mean, especially when you first meet with somebody, what's the first thing you do or say or ask them?
Two levels that you're looking at. One is what they tell you as far as their goals, and then B, what you observe movement wise. I'm not at liberty to be able to look at somebody and they say they want to gain muscle, and I'm like, well, no, you got to lose body fat or anything. That's totally a subjective thing, and I think everybody's really, for the most part, in tune about what they need, such like that. But with that all aside, it's those two things, and usually I'll mention things movement wise. And, a common thing is, somebody will say, I want to gain strength and lose weight. And, so as we're starting to do, say like a basic movement, like a squat, notice their knees start to knock in, and maybe there's mentioning that they have some knee pain, then that would be cue for us to go into, do some more corrective exercise and doing that. So that's where I would suggest, hey, perhaps our goal also is to get to fix this while we're on our journey to lose weight and to gain strength. So that's the only time I would really, offer a suggestion is more along the lines of like a corrective element. I have had a client in the past who I was pretty adamant about, like, you need some corrective work. We're on the verge of getting an injury, and they wanted to continue to go. And then you could probably guess what happened. They had an injury, and then they stopped training altogether.
And I would say, at least for me, I see that unrealistic expectations can be a huge source of distress for people in life.
Sure.
Do you find that also with fitness, people coming in and saying, like, thinking they're going to change overnight, or getting frustrated because they're not seeing change, or kind of on the mental health or psychological level of the work that you do? How do you help people through that?
I've found, and I have to tell myself this too, and that's kind of the way I think I found it, is just being like, it's not that big of a deal. If you need to stop your workout it's not that big of a deal as long as you show up tomorrow or the next time that we're going to do it. And that's what I was mentioning, kind of throwing out the baby out with the bathwater. Like, you can't just quit altogether. It's okay to stop. It's okay to be like, today's not my day. But I think just being like, it's not that big of a deal with it. There's always going to be people that are going to be stronger than you and weaker than you, look better and worse than you. So, and I understand how that's easy to say, but I think we do have to simplify it, especially when we get into something as heady as our own body, where you can go down so many different paths with it. I think it's something that does need to be simplified, and for you to be like, it's not that big of a deal. And now is not my time for me to start, having that negative self-talk. If my body's feeling like I need to stop, I stop. And if maybe in a couple of minutes I feel like picking it back up, I go do that. If it's not my day, then we do it, whenever the next time is. And I actually heard something really good and I'll repeat this to some of my clients as well. Say they don't want to quit, but they're just having like a bad workout day. Basically, you could break your workouts into thirds. A third of them are going to be really good, a third of them are going to be okay, and a third of them are going to be bad. And so if you're having a bad day, just file it under the bad one, and we show up tomorrow and we keep working.
Persistence.
Oh, see, this is very cathartic for me personally, because when it comes to like healthy eating or fitness, like I can get a case of the fuck it so fast and just be like, well, I was off for 2 days. This whole week's a bust. Let's just go
but as
crazy.
long as you get back, it's getting back.
Right. No, but the way that you're putting it, is really resonating with me to cut myself some slack, but also to get myself back on track.
Right. Exactly.
Speaking of, we know half the battle is working out. The other half is eating and nutrition. And that's obviously what we put in our bodies certainly influences how they behave. So what advice do you give your clients in terms of how they eat?
Well, I guess two things. One is if more specifically prioritizing protein, vegetables, and if you're not as much of a vegetable person, at least getting enough fiber in and water. And if you do that, you'd be amazed how little other wiggle room there really is in throughout the day, for little snacks. And if you are cheating on those other times, you're actually really not in that bad of a place. That's like actually a pretty solid place if you're, again, prioritizing, those areas. How, I guess, to structure that. I'll usually mention to clients to focus on the first half of the day versus the last half of the day. Sometimes the last half of the day, it could get emotional. It could get there's a lot of variability in there, where I feel like we usually are a little bit, more focused in the first half of the day. So, and sometimes with that, we can create a little bit of momentum where the evening will be easier to make better choices, if we started off a little bit stronger. Again, you got to find what works for you. And, say you're working out completely strict and you're getting all, and you get all these like real important pillars. Again, you could be left with just kind of this emptiness and be like, I'm looking better, but I just, inside, like emotionally feel like crap. And, you don't want to have that.
I suffer from that when I eat crappy. Like, let's say it's a cheat day, like the pizza day. I will feel like shitty the next day that I did that to myself, because I got off the tracks and I want to stay on the tracks, but at the same time, it just tastes so good, So whether it's cookies or I have a sweet tooth, so that's one of my
well, also though, we don't have to agree on this. We can fight. It's okay. I'm not a fan of the concept of cheat day. And I think Justin's been talking a lot during the show about like the words you use to describe things and how you, frame things for yourself. And, everybody's different. I was just throwing it out there.
I really love that. It's funny. I actually never heard that, but I really, really like that versus it being kind of like a reward day.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you mean, Michelle? Reward?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I like that.
There's negative connotations of cheating versus reward is positive. I earned this. I worked out, or I ate well all week. This is what I'm gonna reward myself with. Okay. Yeah.
And it's funny also with that is that as humans, sometimes we start to get tired of our rewards. So that could even be in its own way where it's like, this doesn't get me high the same way as it used to be. You know what I mean? Kind of thing where it's just like, I want to get a different reward or something like that. And so I think that there's a lot of power in that too, especially if that reward is something it's like, I gotta have it. Sometimes if you're like, yeah, you can have it and it's, your reward, sometimes it's like, okay, yeah, but now I think I've gotten my fix of it. And if not, again, having it as a reward, I think all of us have that inner competitiveness to where that could really feed the fire and be like, yeah, I'm really going to earn it, and it's easy to get down on ourselves. So I love that. I think that's a great word and outlook on it.
I'm in this place, Justin, where I'm trying to put on muscle, but I'm also trying to cut, and I'm trying to balance it too. And you talk about getting 60 grams of protein a day. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
I can't get that. I don't know. I'm not getting that right now. So I do a protein shake, some fish or, some quinoa, but I don't think I'm getting enough protein. And I'm trying to cut my calories to like 1,200, 1,300 a day. So What am I doing wrong?
That can't be good.
I was just going to
Sorry, I'm
say,
not
I
the
would up
expert,
your,
but
yeah, no, I
yeah.
would definitely up your calories. I would just
Yeah.
up your protein intake. You could actually, I think it might be that you're not eating enough.
Yeah.
And
That,
my
and that
body's
can, yeah. And your body's holding on to body fat because of the
okay.
fact you kind of get into starvation mode with that. I would see if maybe you can have, like, again, if you wanted to be really strict with it, see if you can add either another protein shake in it, uh,
Okay.
during the day. And then again, just making sure the fiber is there. Because if you have too much protein, not enough fiber, it could put a lot of strain on your colon and such like that, or at least make sure you're having a lot of water with it.
Okay.
But I would try to just strive for that protein number, even if you're getting more calories in. Because, yeah, I would think you need to be, plus with you working, I'm assuming you're working out fairly regularly, correct?
Doing something every day and trying to do,
So I
some
would probably say
strength
you need
training.
to be closer to 1600, 1800
Okay.
a day. Yeah. And
Okay.
try to just get a majority of, as you add those, have it be more, protein.
Okay. What's
And
your
Yeah.
tip?
Kelly, can I ask why you want to build muscle? What's the motivation?
To look good for my wife. No, look good in a bikini. Uh, why do I want to build muscle? Well, look, again, we talked about as you get older, I think it's
Uh-huh.
important to build. I've heard this, Justin, where you want to build a solid base because it's only going to get worse as you get older. So I'm in this age right now where, in my opinion, I need to build this muscle base. It's going to slowly go away. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's true. And
Like your muscle
there's
mass.
science behind it. Yeah.
Muscle, upper body, lower legs, correct.
So
Mhm.
your muscles do atrophy as you get older. When you pass 40, it happens at a certain rate, and then you pass 60, it happens at an even faster rate. And that's muscle strength and muscle power and muscle speed. Muscle strength drops. I might not be getting these numbers right, but I would say like about like 2 to 3% past 40s, and then we're getting about double that at about 60s. And then muscle speed is about, I want to say it's about like 4 to 6%, and then again double past 60. Muscle power is muscle speed times muscle strength. So you could take those numbers, multiply them, and that's we're talking at about 12% muscle power starts to atrophy past 40. And then again, we're talking about 24% when we get past 60. So
Mm-hmm.
those are like higher
That's
numbers,
high.
with that. Right. And so, but that's why as we get older, you fall, you break your hip. And that's what muscle power is it's our strength and our speed. So for example, like if we're tripping, we need the muscle speed to be able to get our foot out in front of us, and the muscle strength to be able to deaccelerate, stop ourselves, and to hold on to it. So it makes sense why, there's a lot that's there. I mean, just think about tripping now. It's a lot to kind of, get. So if we're not deliberately working on those things,
Mm-hmm.
then, in doing even, fall related things like lunges and stuff, and let's just say lunges hurt our knees, that's even more of a reason for us to do the corrective stuff. So that way we can do lunges and we can do preventive work, so you could see how we can now create a little bit of a roadmap as to what we're doing. So to the point, just anybody who's over 40 and especially over 60, you do want to at least just get some regular maintenance for that exact, reason. So with my clients, we go over 8 basic lifts. We have a horizontal pull, which is like a
Mm-hmm.
row, a horizontal press, which is like a chest press, a vertical press, which is like a shoulder press, a vertical pull, which is like a lat pull down,
Mm-hmm.
a crunch or a spinal flexion, um, like a crunch or ab exercise, a hip hinge, like a deadlift, a squat, and a weighted carry. I believe that's all 8.
Hmm.
And all those, if you can do all of those regularly, and I realize that seems like a lot. And again, we have to scale back to what we were saying before, where if you're like, whoa, that was just way, I'm not even going to do one of those. Let's scale back to we're just walking for a minute a day, or we're just stretching for a minute a day. And then again, this is the road that we're going to build ourselves up for.
Yeah.
But once you get to that, to try to get those 8 lifts, and so that's typically the foundation that I'll have with my clients, and then maybe seeing other stuff. But if you do those and do those fairly regularly with weight that you feel a slight challenge, at least a slight challenge, if not, like, I don't know if I can get a couple more reps towards the end of your set, even if it's just one set, you're really on the right path. That I would say that's basic maintenance stuff. If the rest of our body's feeling okay, we're regular, motivation, and we feel like we just want to get into a basic, again, maintenance routine, those 8 are going to be the pillars.
And Kelly, sorry, I didn't mean to like question you why you're building muscle, but really,
it's worth mentioning
yeah,
though.
no, but also because at least for me, Kelly isn't someone I think that lacks motivation, but for me,
Yeah,
like sometimes it helps to remind myself why it's important for me to make that effort,
absolutely.
because like temporarily in the moment I'm in, I don't want to make the effort.
Right.
But having that ultimate goal in mind of, okay, when I'm 70 and I have balance and all the muscle things you just described, that can push me sometimes when I'm feeling like I don't want to do it.
Absolutely. And even just the fact of like that it's okay if that workout's not going to be that, isn't going to be
Right.
good that day, or if you're going to quit. You're doing this for when you're 70, like you said, it's the long game with this. So as long as it's the consistency factor, don't worry about the day-to-day stuff.
Yeah, I wish more people thought of that term, the long game. Because again, we're talking about unrealistic expectations or like immediate gratification. People get really impatient, I think, when it comes to fitness or eating right or
Absolutely.
things like that.
Oh yeah, and that's exactly it, Michelle. To answer your initial question, it is the long game I'm trying to play here because I'm thinking, okay, I see people get older and they get heavy and they develop diabetes and they get the osteoporosis or whatever, and I believe in aging as well as possible. Eat well, work out. We all know how this is going to end. It's a question of how do you age? Do you age well or do you age poorly? And in America, unfortunately, a lot of people age poorly. Okay,
Yeah.
between diet and exercise, a lack thereof, I should say.
I think too, with my kids, we're in a phase of like joking around, future you will thank you. We
Yeah,
say that a lot lately. So like if
Yeah,
you clean for 5 minutes today, on the weekend, you don't have to clean for an hour. Future you is going to be happy that you did that, or future you is going to be happy if you
absolutely.
did your homework, right after school, or all these things. But that's
oh
what
yeah,
that reminded me of.
yeah. No,
At
it's
work, I do that a lot. I'm like, if I just do this, future me is going to be very happy.
Totally. Well, it's the same way why we save money. You know what I mean? It's a sacrifice in the moment for the future gain.
Yes, yeah.
absolutely. Quick question: what's your take, Justin, on intermittent fasting? Am I saying that right? Intermittent
Yeah,
fasting.
intermittent fasting. Yeah, if it works for you, it's okay. It's there's there is some benefits to it if you can close down the window in which you're eating.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
can there's a lot of benefit during the time that you're not. There's growth hormone that's released and a lot of other hormones that are beneficial. But if it doesn't work for you, it's fine. There's other ways that you can accomplish the same thing without that. But some people like that because it's I cut off at a certain point. You use your sleep as kind of like that center of the window, and then you cut off
Mm-hmm.
at a certain point before you go to bed, and then you start eating X amount of hours or whatever after you wake up. But to wake up first and have some water, give yourself a second, maybe go to the bathroom, because it's healthy to do that first thing in the morning, especially after you have a lot of water. Giving yourself a couple of minutes or hour or whatever that window is, can be healthy for everybody. But again, you got to figure out what works for you. It's definitely not an end all if you can't do that, or if you don't do that. I don't really follow that as much, just because, again, with kids, like, it doesn't allow me to do that. Like, I have to eat right in the morning. If not, I just don't eat in the morning. And if I don't eat in the morning, I'm a miserable person the rest of the day. So I got to prioritize my kids that way. So, and myself that way, for that matter.
For me, personally, for intermittent fasting to work for me, I would have to be asleep those 16 hours.
Right. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I get that. And it doesn't necessarily, work for everybody. And again, especially with kids, it's a whole other game.
Oh yeah, I used to do the 16-8. I wouldn't eat breakfast. Basically, I would wait till lunch. I had some success with that, but at the end of the day, I think it made me grumpy. So now I'll do like a little. Maybe I get up in the morning and I'll have like a hard boiled egg and
Great.
maybe a banana or something, just
Great.
something to
Yeah.
to keep me going.
And just hydrate in the morning. I have to remind myself, because I'll reach for the coffee sometimes first thing, but your body has been metabolizing food as you've been sleeping, and it needs water to continue to do that and to have all the plumbing work the right way. So drinking, keeping water by your bed or nearby, or just keeping it handy, so that way first thing you can, doesn't have to be immediately, but just, before you reach for anything else, you reach for water first. Definitely an easy no cost way, to, you know, keep your health, in check and start the day off the right way. Kind of like it's the setting your bed kind of thing.
Oh yeah, making your bed in the morning. Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
It would be nice to get back though to the personal connection you have with your work and, your
Yeah.
life. You have so much going on when you have little ones at home. How your relationship with your career, with your fitness has evolved since you started. You did start doing this at 17.
Right. Yeah.
What wisdom for yourself do you have now that you didn't have then?
I think again back to the looking at like the corrective stuff. And I think it just as a 17-year-old, when you're younger, your body's indestructible. You're kind of you're looking through your own lens. So it's hard to be objective. And, looking back at even my first couple of clients being like, oh, well, I should have done that. I could even think about that with people that I train maybe like, 5 years ago, or even employees and stuff, some ways that I would change things.
Oh, I'm mortified about some things I did as a baby therapist when I was first starting out. I'm like, oh my God,
Right.
that client did not get the best care.
Yeah, but I think also, allowing yourself to go through that evolution, because you want somebody, it'd be weird if I was stagnant in the same type of trainer that I was at 17 that I am now. You know what I mean? You wouldn't, you wouldn't want that. You want somebody, and that's what sounds so good about X number of years of experience, is you want somebody with more experience who's, done that. But I think, yeah, just that corrective element of addressing the body as a whole, where before it was strictly just about muscles, and it was about like, we're going to do curls, and we're going to do this, and we're going to, we're going to try to make you look better because of, in this kind of superficial way, versus really kind of getting underneath and getting more sustainable results and getting people to feel better. Because you can do that and work the, quote unquote beach muscles and stuff. The person maybe doesn't necessarily feel good, especially if they have like any shoulder issues and such like that. You could be even making the situation worse. So, having that kind of more objective view.
So Justin, if you had to do it all over again, what would you change?
I wouldn't have, worked in entertainment. And I think I would have just dove right into health and fitness, and just maybe just, not that I didn't like the time. I met some great people, had a really good time, learned a lot, and maybe that got me to where I am now. And maybe without that, I wouldn't be who I am today. So, I guess that's, I think my one regret is that I didn't learn more, because I think now, like, I really want to learn, and all, even on some of like my spare time, will like, crack books and stuff like that, exercise science books, and kind of learn new, try to learn new stuff. I have an additional certification I'm looking to get soon. So I think just that yearning to want to learn and be more of a sponge that I didn't have before, where it was more of like just kind of getting the job done, getting the certification done. I guess it's the proverbial, enjoying the journey versus, just, focusing on the goal, which I guess is also metaphor to working out in itself.
Yeah, or even in hindsight to think like, what mental anguish did I put myself through that wasn't necessary?
Right.
Sometimes
Yeah.
we can look back and say,
Totally.
oh man, I really didn't have to stress about that.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And I think, yeah, you're right. And I think, yeah, being like, everything's going to be okay. And I think a lot of times we would tell our old selves that a lot of times. And so I guess if there's any bit of advice to take in the current moment, it's to, again, give yourself that permission that things are going to be okay. And a lot of the things that we worry about, don't even really cross people's minds. When you embarrass yourself or whatever, people aren't really thinking about you. You know what I mean? Like if you're, again, in a fitness class or something like that, you're feeling self-conscious or whatever, I guarantee you people aren't really thinking about you and such. Like, it's just, you're kind of in your own head about it. So
Yeah.
And you said the term enjoy the journey, which I think a lot of times, especially in hustle culture like we have in this country, part of enjoying the journey is recognizing moments where you feel satisfied or fulfilled.
yeah,
And you can skip over those moments because you're going to the next thing or trying to strive for something else. And, we talk about what happiness is. And that's a weird word, but I think more so when you're recognizing what satisfaction feels like, what fulfillment feels like, that
right.
meaningful role thing. Those are the actual things we're striving for. We just call it happiness.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And to follow up with that, we need these. I think in our lives we need these tests, right? We almost need to fail sometimes in order to actually succeed. And actually, we also need to like just try new things and see if we like it.
Yeah, totally. And even, exercising, like if you're really getting down to like what drives progression and growth, like if you're like, okay, we're here, we're ready, we want to push it. it's pushing yourself to failure. So failure drives growth in the same way as it does kind of in every life. So again, the metaphor with working out, and I think if you are able to work out in the morning, it does kind of set the tone to where if you're starting off, being like, I can do this even if I fail, I think you kind of set the tone for the rest of the day, and hopefully, for the rest of your, days, by practicing that.
All these concepts we're talking about, learning can't happen without mistakes.
Yeah,
And if you're making
absolutely.
mistakes and you're learning, then you're getting positive reinforcement and building your confidence. So you need that element to build up.
And that's why a lot of, there's some, even some kids who are used to getting straight A's all the time and, being, the smartest in their class when they get to, a college or even into the workplace and they realize that they're not the smartest one there, it shatters their whole self-image because they're just used to winning all the time. And so they're like, well, I'm not the winner. You can't. So there's a lot of lessons in doing that and, being, getting back on the horse and trying again.
Yeah, and that's why there's so much legitimate backlash against helicopter parenting or bulldozer
Yes,
parenting.
exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Which has been tough as a parent too, is letting your kids fail too. So I need to practice that, just as much, but you're absolutely right.
This is a question for both of you. How do you let your kids fail? What does that look like?
Obviously, depending on their age. So, Justin, you have a 3-year-old.
Yeah, right. So you're right. And it depends on, keeping them, safe and that type of sense. With my 3.5-year, she's a lot more aware than we realize, which is a gift and a curse. But if we present, the situation and be like, well, if you choose A, this is what happens. If you choose B, this is what happens. She usually makes the right decision, Occasionally she doesn't, but then, again, it's still a win because of the fact that she's learning.
It's like the saying, you have to let your kids eat dirt when they grow up so they can build a tolerance to bacteria. Is that right?
There's fiber in it too. No, I'm just kidding. No, that's not true.
Big takeaway from today: eat dirt.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, right. Builds grit. Yeah. No.
Justin Roth is a certified personal trainer and corrective exercise specialist in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Justin, where can we find you?
So on my website, chapelhillpersonaltrainer.com. That's my website if you're interested in online training, if you're not in the Chapel Hill area, or for in-person training if you are. And I'm also on Instagram at Justin Roth PT. That's my handle. So PT, personal trainer. There are a whole bunch of really great tips that I have posted before. So be encouraged to check that out. And again, if you do want some one-on-one help or even just wanted to, discuss the possibility of training, chapelhillpersonaltrainer.com is the best way to reach out to me.
You've been fantastic, which is why we had you on. But
thank you.
Yeah, there are some podcasts out there that have people on that claim to be experts, but and they just talk about, talk through their ass. But
thank you.
You're a fantastic trainer and an even better person, Justin. So really appreciate you coming on the podcast.
And that's actually huge because whether it's personal trainer, a therapist, or someone you're looking for, like if you can have someone you trust vouch for that person, 90% of my referrals in my private practice come from work, like someone referring that they already know my work,
Absolutely.
versus just looking on a website and being like, I'll just pick a random trainer near me.
There is, especially with training, that could be a bit of a risk. So no, I appreciate that. I appreciate you saying that.
Honestly, I could have kept talking to Justin for another 2 hours. I have some questions I wrote down here. I didn't even ask him.
I know. And I think we could have for sure, or we could have a second round with him.
The reason why I thought it was so important for him to come on the podcast is because I think there's a huge connection between mind, body, and soul. The more I've prioritized my body, I think the more my mental health has improved.
Yeah.
And Justin is one of those guys who totally understands that. And he actually, when he works with people, it's not just physically, what are you doing? It's mentally, how are you doing it?
No, it's like it's a whole person approach. It's taking into account, like he said, not just muscles and or losing weight, but looking at the whole picture.
Yeah.
And he does take into account the psychological aspects of working out, which are huge for most people. That's one of the biggest barriers for people to work out is kind of what they're going through either emotionally or mentally, where they just don't feel like they can.
And that was what's so great about his gym, Poise. It didn't feel intimidating at all. It felt very inclusive, and it also felt very achievable. You saw people from all different kinds of body sizes and ages there. When you walked out of that place, like you really, it's part of a family. He used to always say, "Fam, hey fam." I quote him when I say like, "Come on, fam," but really, it was a family, and it did feel very. It was just special. It was a really special
Yeah,
place.
that sense of community.
Yeah.
And he's also focusing on an aspect that is super important, but not everyone does, which is that corrective piece. Like you could do all the working out in the world, but if you're doing it wrong or in a way that's going to exacerbate an injury or cause an injury, I mean, I guess there is a right way to do things. And everyone's just kind of like trying, like a 6-year-old person who's trying hit, or, those rope things that I don't even know how to describe it, grabbing the ropes and making a move. We're all trying these wild new crazes, and it's not safe for most of us if we're not doing it correctly.
And the other thing we talked about too is, finding your purpose and then executing on that. And I think it's something a lot of people struggle with. That's why I brought it up early, because I feel like he's done that. And that's certainly something I think about. You get so much from helping people. You can feed your soul. What they say, people get more out of helping others than they do helping themselves. Or gift giving is the same thing, right? You get more from giving gifts versus receiving them. It's kind of the same thing, same theory. So
volunteering, which I know you and I are big on.
So I hope the takeaway for folks from this podcast is that's one thing. And then obviously taking care of your body as you get older, and how important that is for both your physical well-being as well as your mental well-being.
Yes.
What was your takeaway, Michelle?
Yeah, honestly, it's the same as what you just said. But also, as I pointed out in the show, something that really impacted me was when he was talking about that 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 thing. And how there are going to be days when it's just not for you, or you're not going to do it as long as you had planned, or whatever.
I have to give myself rest days, because if I don't, I regret it. But now as I get older, I feel like that's part of the process.
Right. You have to do that.
Yeah.
From what I understand.
Right.
But there's things you could do on a rest day where you're not pushing yourself hard, but still
walking.
Having some kind of physical exertion.
A rest day to me is a walking day. So for example, like today's a rest day for me. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go for a walk. Listen to a podcast.
Put the cat on a leash. Take it for a walk. We tried that once.
Did you really?
Yeah. It was like the most foolish errand ever. What did they call it? A fool's errand? I don't know what got into us, why we thought that there would be any success in that.
I know. I bought a leash. I bought a leash for Chai when we got him in, and I realized he wouldn't even get into it.
I don't know what we were thinking.
Hey, God bless people. If they can walk their cat, great. I see these Instagram videos, people taking their cats on hikes. I'm like, that is crazy.
Yeah.
But some cats are chill. They can do it, but not mine. If you're struggling with family, friends, or coworkers, in a bad relationship and wondering what to do, or you want a relationship and to set yourself up for success, then we want to talk to you. So make your appointment on Unrelating. To be a guest, ask a question, or recommend a topic, drop us an email at theunrelatingpodcast@gmail.com. And be sure to follow us on Instagram or Facebook.